Hello, everybody. Welcome into the LFC Transfer Room. I am Jack. Delighted to be alongside Kev, Nathan, and Steven today for what should be a fun Transfer Central live stream discussing some outgoings, some incomings, a fascinating day of discussion around the defensive midfield spot at the Liverpool Football Club. Kev, we've been doing this for about a month strong now on these Tuesday afternoons for me, evenings for you. How are you doing today?
All good, mate. Good to keep the couple going for this long. So, no, great, mate. Great.
Good to hear.
How are you?
Steven? I'm doing great. Steven, yourself?
I'm doing very good. Feeling a little bit jealous being the third wheel here against you two guys, but it's nice to be able to join in.
Hey, at least you're at the fourth wheel that we've made, Nathan. Nathan, here with the transfer room. Excited to have it here with you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, good to be back on. Glad to
Good.
get back on for the second time.
Indeed. Great to have you here. In the comments, let us know your thoughts on some of the news that we've had today. It's been a fun day. In some aspects, less fun in others. We can kick the stream off with some Transfer Central confirmed news. We've got a lot of rumors to talk about today, but obviously Fabinho departing the club. Confirmed yesterday, 219 appearances, 11 goals, 5 seasons. He won every trophy available to him at least one time. Kev, I think just what are going to be your parting thoughts for our good Brazilian lighthouse as he leaves the club now?
I'm kind of gutted in a way. I'm going to miss, his safety net for the back four that he's proved for them over the seasons. I'm going to miss his goal against City, that thunderbolt. I'm not going to lie, the first game he played for us was the pre-season game where he hadn't missed a penalty until he took one in front of the cop, and there he goes and misses it for the first time in his career. It's a shame, really, do you know what I mean? But, all things come to an end. We move on. Hopefully we can move on and we bring someone else in. But that's looking a bit of a struggle, but we'll probably get into that a bit later. But no, it's a shame he was part of our first Champions winning team. So, and he's probably been our best defensive midfielder for quite some time as well.
Steven, yeah, he leaves quite big shoes to fill. Maybe not at his peak of his powers the last season or two, but certainly going to be a massive hole to fill. Kind of your thoughts as he moves on from the club now.
Yeah, it's going to be a big hole to fill with it's very much he's become quite a central figure at the club in how he's just carried himself ever since he arrived. And I don't know if anybody read his goodbye post on his social medias, but it was quite heartfelt, and clearly he's sad about leaving. Like, this was his home, no more than Bobby. Like, a lot of his kids grew up in Liverpool, so it became his home. But as with the business of footballers, you could be up and gone in no amount of time at all, and you gotta move on with that. And we kind of have to do the same. We will miss him, but I think it was the right time for him to go, in the sense that we bought him for £44 million. He's currently we sold him then for £40 million. It's realistically, it's good business selling him at the same price we got him, while winning everything in between. That's usually the business model you'd like to have for your players. Hopefully his replacement comes in and is just as successful, whether that's the likes of Romeo Lavia or Andre from Brazil, whoever it may be. We'll get into that obviously a little bit later, but there is big shoes to fill there. But I think in the new system that we have going forward with that double pivot that's going to be in the midfield, I don't think there's going to be as much pressure of a safety net on that position with the two people side by side there.
You mentioned some of the incomings. We'll jump on that in just a moment. Want to say thank you to Jen for the constant support, the £5 you've given here today. A constant figure in the chat. It's always appreciated by all of us here at the LFC Transfer Room. And Jen, thank you very much as always. And Nathan, I'll let you jump in on your final thoughts as he leaves, as well as a point that Steven made, that the right time for him to go. Price point quite nice considering we bought him 4 or 5 years ago now.
The only thing I will say is I think I agree with the price point. You can't really turn down 40 million, but ideally we could have been in a better position for him to leave now, to say, okay, yeah, it's the right time, farewell. You've been a great servant to the club, a legend, as we mentioned before. Arguably the best DM that we've seen since, well, maybe in our lifetime. You can have debates about Alonso and Mascherano and players like that, but the only concern for me is obviously, a lot of Liverpool fans have been talking about the fact we haven't got a natural six there now. Letting him go right now is putting us into a bit of a danger zone, considering the season starts in like 13 days or 12 days or something. But the way we're run, you can't see a way that we're not going to accept a £40 million bid for the player that we've seen slowly over the last 12 to 18 months. Just not be anywhere near the player that he has been previously. That has been, a key figure in basically protecting that back line and, making us be able to compete on all fronts. And I ideally, you'd like him to stay and maybe bring Lavia in. Again, like you said, we'll talk about more transfers in a minute, but that's what I would have liked to happen. But I'll just go back on to, I think it was Stephen's point, was it? Well, a video that he created and like the post he put up about leaving. I don't know about yous, like, but I felt like that hit me that a little bit. I feel like he, just everything, you could see how much he thinks highly of the club and the city. Like, you see a lot of players joining clubs and leaving clubs, and they talk about, you always say one of the best and one of the best this, one of the best that. He was very much to the point. Liverpool the best fans, best club, anything like that. And yeah, I think it's a big loss, but it's one that if we were in a slightly better position, we'd all be sitting there going, that's a very, very good deal, which it is. But I think it just puts us a little bit vulnerable at the minute. But hopefully we get that covered.
The financial aspect seems quite wise for the club in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly.
But for me, the saddest part is that he goes with the new system coming in that could have made him have a renaissance and be better than he was as he left. And so we won't know, is he completely washed as a player? I mean, did we completely rinse him dry, running him ragged in that defensive midfield spot by himself? Or was there still some left in the tank that we didn't get to take advantage of? That feels a little sad, but I think he's going to make a lot of money in Saudi Arabia.
One thing I will add, just before you go on to anything else, towards the end of the season, for like the last 10 games, I'm not saying we got, Fabinho of like 2019, but he looked very good and a lot better than what he did previously, working in like a double pivot with Trent. He looked, maybe 80% the player that we have seen being the best in that position for maybe 3 or 4 years. But yeah, I think the financial side of it just makes it almost impossible for a club like Liverpool, which we haven't really got that many assets that we can go and sell right now to recoup money and go and buy other players. It's just, he was never going to stay when that bid come in, was he?
Indeed. I mean, it's hard to turn that down. And it's a great point that you make that he looked better next to Trent in that system. Stephen also made the point there is going to be less of a stressor on a defensive mid to kind of cover that entire center of the pitch. The double pivot might make a replacement it doesn't need to be as ready-made as Fabinho was when he came in 2018. And he even took a little while to get ingratiated in the system when he was first brought in. So let's talk about, before we jump into that, the more outlandish rumors available. Josko Gvardiol being reported by HIJACK in Spain that we are interested in trying to bring him in. It's the classic, like, we could be interested, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. Stephen, tell me why we're going to be signing Josko Gvardiol as most expensive center back of all time.
Oh, because I'm going to be marrying Sydney Sweeney next week. That's why. To be perfectly honest.
Congratulations, Stephen.
Thanks. Yeah, wedding's going to be in Italy and everything's going to be beautiful, and Guardiola's going to be there too. We're not signing him. There's not a hope of that. If we're haggling over a couple of million with the likes of Romeo Lavia, do you really think that John Henry's going to reach into his back pocket, find that black Amex card, and then slap it on the table and tell Leipzig, excuse me, name escaped me there. Tell Leipzig that here you go, here's 100 million. Like, there's more chance of me, as I said, marrying Sydney Sweeney than there is of us getting Guardiola, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah,
it's
Nathan,
paper talk.
He just seems like he's close to City, if not staying. It's going to require a lot of money that we just don't really have and don't seem willing to spend on anything. Nathan, if you want to jump in.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were talking to me.
Totally good. Yeah, I mean, any world you see this happening.
I think if we're not going to sit there and pay 90, 100 million for Bellingham, the player that we've been flirting with for like the last 2 years, that every journalist up until maybe April, May said that we would definitely sign him pretty much. There's not a chance we're going to go and spend. Just to put it out there, by the way, I'm fine that we're not going to spend this money on him. I'm absolutely fine. I think we do need, I'll criticise SFG more than a lot of people, but I'm absolutely fine with us not going to buy him. I think, certain players that we need, let's be realistic, if he comes in right now, there's going to be a slight change in the defence where probably Robertson's going to have to play less, or, he's going to want to play over Van Dijk. We don't know exactly what Klopp's going to do going into next season. We might stay in this 3-2-2-3 system that we've been playing, but you never know. He's a good player, we all know that, but I think for value for money and for what we need and what we need to spend, I don't mind. I think he'll be a good signing for City. I think anyone that signs for City, with how they dominate the ball, are going to look great anyway. So fair play to him. He's a good player, but I'm all right with not signing him, to be honest.
Yeah, Kev, for you, just to kind of round out the very quick Gvardiol discussion, I don't imagine you're going to be too devastated that he's not likely going to be brought in at the price point.
No, absolutely not. And I totally agree with what the lad said. At the end of the day, we paid that out. We're not getting another midfielder in. We're not getting two midfielders in, and that money could be better spent elsewhere. To be honest, and with the amount that we've got to be spending, we can't afford to be spending that much on a left centre back at the minute. Although it would be nice to spend and bring someone in, I just think we've got other priorities at the minute. So no, it was a non-starter when we were first linked with them. It's just continued, and at the end of the day, it does. As Nathan said, it'll only be Man City will be going to. We won't be coming to us.
Yeah, he's stated he likes the club. I don't know if he said he was a Liverpool fan outright, but I think in an ideal world where there was a limitless pot of cash, he might want to come to Liverpool. We might want to bring him in, but that pot of cash does not exist, unfortunately.
Everybody's a Liverpool fan. Whether you say you are or you aren't, everybody's a Liverpool fan. It's like a Ferrari fan in Formula One. You might be a Mercedes fan, but you're a Ferrari fan. Everybody's a Liverpool fan.
I think some people in the Premier League underestimate our pull as well sometimes. Like, again, going back to what Stephen just said there, everyone's a Liverpool fan. Like, Liverpool through even like early in the early 2000s, we weren't as good as what we have been. But then everyone knows about Istanbul. You know what I mean? Like that type of era. Everyone knows about Gerrard and how big and how important player he was in English football. Players like Gvardiol, they will be quite younger now and maybe not see that, but they'll know about it through the family. But they'll also see now over the last recent history of 4 or 5 years that you can come to Liverpool and you can be given the chance to become one of the best centre backs in the world, which is we all knew how good Van Dijk was when we signed him from Southampton, but he is he's in the debate now of whether he could be arguably have had the best season ever as a centre back in English football. Do you know what I mean? You get given that opportunity, and I think one thing I will say is I think we've got the manager there as well that can make players a lot better and give them that opportunity as well.
Indeed. I mean, you mentioned Bellingham, Nathan. We didn't pull the trigger on him, and he was supposedly top of our priority list for the last half decade, it feels like, since he came out of the womb. But that didn't happen, and so it's very hard to imagine that happening. Crazy things have happened. Make sure if you're new to the channel, you subscribe to the page. You follow us on our other social platforms, LFC Transfer Room. Like this stream if you want to see more content like this, or if you just like this stream. We can jump into the next topic of discussion today. More news around Romeo Lavia came out today from Paul Joyce. Not as positive as we've gotten in recent weeks, saying that Liverpool are ready to move on to other targets if Southampton don't budge off of their £50 million price tag. Bid was 41 million, including add-ons. Kev, I'll slide it to you first. We've seen that news. What interpretations do you make? How upset do you get, considering there's not a 41 and 50? Those numbers are quite close. So some millions that come in between them, obviously, but to back away from a target you've been around for so long at such a close point, it's intriguing to say the least.
I feel as though I'm in the first couple of episodes of Friends and I'm watching Ross and Rachel trying to get together. It's ridiculous how long this has gone on for. It's painful at times. You know what I mean? Because you hear one thing today of, oh, well, we've paid 40 million for Melissa. We've put up 40 million for Melissa Reddy. That's then changed to 41 million by someone else. It's by Paul Joyce. What's right, what's wrong? Then we find out it's further away from what we were paying last week. So what the hell's going on? It's baffling. I reckon we just need to cough up and pay the money, to be honest, because I've got a feeling this is going to go to the last day of the season of the transfer window. We should have brought him in. He should be in Singapore now at least, and he should be part of at least this squad and be ready to be playing against Chelsea. The longer this is going, the further away that's going to be and distance away. And we're going to be leaving ourselves short and frustrated and annoyed by if that game goes against the way we want it to go. So it's causing more frustration than anything. I think Liverpool are trying to wraggle and try and claim the high ground against Southampton, who, quite honestly, I'd be doing exactly the same. At the end of the day, you want him. Pay the price. Do you know what I mean? But we're not that far away. We're in the 40s now. Is it till next week? on Thursday we actually bring him into the squad and a deal gets finalised for him. Who knows? But it's getting a little bit annoying now, and it's getting a little bit at the point now where, you know, we just got to cough up. Do you know what I mean? Stop playing the tramp with the Ferrari, and we can't afford the petrol. Let's just get the money out there and just pay for it.
Indeed, it's a strange one. I think my understanding of the financial situation is that they want 50 million this summer because there is a 20% sell on to City. So basically you come away with 40 because they would be selling to City for 40 next summer anyways, because that's their buyback that activates in the summer of 2024. So for them, they've proven to be more stubborn negotiators than I think Liverpool anticipated, which has been very interesting. Stephen, before the stream, you were pretty simple about it. Just get it done. I'm interested just kind of to elaborate on that thought for you. It seems weird, like Kevin said, that we've let it kind of drag on for so long, and that it's gotten to this point where we're just penny pinching on a player that we really do need.
Yeah, I think it's the more, as Kev said, the more it drags on, not only does it hurt us, I think it hurts Southampton as well, because realistically, the only way City are buying him back is if he has if he has another good season next season. That's barring an injury. That's barring anything that goes wrong. That's barring a bad season. That's barring a bad run of form. There's a lot of ifs that are going on in there and that. So realistically, either Southampton can take a lesser deal now or run the risk in 12 months' time or 9 months' time, whatever it may be, of maybe not getting the 40 million from City. So would you rather the guaranteed money now, even though it might be a little bit less, or would you get, look, I think I don't think he's worth 50 million. I think he's 40 and add-ons. Plus add-ons, which can come to 50 if he hits them, and that's fine and well, because the add-ons can stretch over a couple of years. I'm not too worried about that. But realistically, I think Southampton are actually shooting themselves in the foot in relation to this. While we need a 6, we're not unbelievably desperate. Like, we're not clutching at straws, because Jones played a very good role in that 6 for England. And I understand it was the under-21s, but he had support there as well, much the same as he'd have support in this double pivot with Trent. So I don't see why he can't do a bit of a number there. And he looked very good in the last preseason game that we had against Leicester. Very, very good and solid in the minutes that he played. So realistically, I don't think we're as desperate as we're making out to be. I think it's a bit of the fact that us as fans are kind of panicking a wee bit and seeing other teams around us signing left, right, and centre. But that's always been the case under FSG and Klopp. Or take a look at Chelsea's 600 million window and look where that got them. So while I would like a little bit more spending, I don't mind not spending silly. Like United, for example, near £70 million on Højlund, who's scored 9 Serie A goals last season, and realistically, I think it's going to be a massive flop for them. He's going to have way too much pressure on him, and he's going to stall immediately. If he gets a bad run of form, those fans will turn on him. They have no time for any of that nonsense, and nor should they. They're United. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world, much the same as us. But I think we need to have a little bit of patience here. And as I said to everybody in the group as well, I trust the training staff. I trust Klopp. Whether Lavia or whoever comes in now, or whether they come in later on in the window when the season has started, I trust them to have them up and running at the right time to be able to play and contribute when they do come in. I think it's a matter. I think Southampton are really shooting themselves in the foot there in relation to this, purely because of how it could really, really blow up on their face if, God forbid, and touch wood, it doesn't happen. I would never wish an injury on somebody. But if Lavia twists the knee at the start of the season and an ACL or an MCL is gone, they can kiss goodbye to any 40 million that they were supposedly going to get. Whereas if they ended up selling to us for a little bit less, they would have had money there anyway. And I understand they would have had to give them 20% of it to City, but something's better than nothing at the same time. And while I understand they're trying to be stubborn about it in their tactics, and I understand people's patience are running out, as JMU said there in the comments. I get it. I do. My patience is running out too, but it's not been our model for the past near 6 or 7 years, 8 years since Klopp has arrived in. we've bought the right players at the right time for the right money, and we've won everything doing it. Could we have been supported a little bit more? Sure, but all of the teams that went and overspent, they're getting slapped with FFP sanctions now, and we're the only one that hasn't. So realistically, I think we're operating in the right model. It's just hard when you're the ones playing by the rules and everybody else isn't. That's my view on it, because that's how I feel we are.
For sure. Nathan, I won't give a massive preamble for you. Just your thoughts on the negotiations currently.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think there's that many different fees getting put out there. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it, because I don't actually think that all the journalists that are coming out saying it's this fee and that fee, I don't actually think they know too much either. I think there's a lot of guesswork going on, and ultimately, as Stephen said before, I feel like I don't know if we're not at the point where we're desperate, you know what I mean? It's going to be an interesting one against Chelsea. I don't know if any of you have watched any of the pre-season games, but they've looked sharp. They've looked quite good. They've looked much better than what they did last season. But if you'd had £10 had to put a bet on a draw in a Premier League game in any season, you're putting it on Liverpool against Chelsea. So Curtis Jones against Bayern could be an interesting one to see how he does in a 6. Against, he played against Leicester. I don't know. Lavia, would I like him? Yeah. I think 50 million is well too much, but ultimately we're in a position now where, these young players that do well in the Premier League, like the Southampton and all the other clubs know that, the big clubs have got the money to go and buy the players. Look at Declan Rice going to Arsenal. Look at Casado now, Chelsea, fussing about whether to pay an extra few million to get him. And ultimately, the clubs can afford to say no, especially now with Southampton, reportedly that they've agreed a deal to sell, I think, James Ward-Prowse to West Ham for like 20-25 million or something. The only thing I will say is, going back to what Stephen said before, if he stays next, you don't know what's going to happen next season. There's no certainties whether he's going to be great. There's no certainties whether he's going to stay fit. Banking on, Man City coming in next season and going, his 40 million could not be a certainty. He could have an absolute stinker, and his price, halves, and no one's interested. They also might be in a position where they don't get promoted, and that 40 million that goes down to 20 million, is also a lot less needed than what it would have been now. Do you know what I mean? Going to be an interesting one. I'd take him. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's the be all and end all. I'd rather have someone more experienced. But you can see why they're saying no. And if we are, literally going in and saying, we're going to offer you an extra 2 million on the first bid, even though they're saying we want 50. We're willing to sort out how the payments are going to be made and stuff like that, and let you have add-ons. But we could be just doing what we do sometimes and just saying, well, we're not willing to pay what you want. Do you know what I mean? If that's the case, walk away and find someone else.
I'll follow up with that, though, on you, Nathan. I think Southampton might feel like they've got Liverpool in a bit of a bind where what is that alternative? Who are they turning to as the guy that could jump in at a reasonable figure? Because it feels like there's the market's quite thin in that position.
Yeah, I agree. It probably is. And I think last season, I think it was even worse. I think, obviously, Tchouaméni was one that we were massively linked with. I think this summer, there's been a few that have moved on. I don't think it's a case of Lavia or there's no one else. I think there is players out there. I think I'm not going to go into the player that we're speaking about next, but the player that we've been linked with is one option. I know he's not a specialist 6, but he could do a similar role to what Bruno Gomes has done for Newcastle. I'd hate us to go and waste money on a player like Calvin Phillips or someone who before the last 18 months was probably someone that was highly rated, but I don't know. We all have a chat about the football in the little WhatsApp group we've got, and I have been massively against Curtis Jones playing a 6, but I'd also be all right with it if it means that we're not going to go and just waste money on someone for the sake of it and give him a chance. And I feel like this season, as Liverpool fans, we need to understand that we've signed a lot of players, a lot of midfielders, and it might take a bit of time for them to bed in and get to where we want to be. And maybe that could be, Curtis Jones could be the player that could do that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one to kind of throw you under the bus there with, Nathan, just about who's the alternative, because we really don't know. There's not been one that's been made apparent. Kev, I want to swing it to you about the Curtis Jones angle at the 6. He might play in the friendly here tomorrow. It's an interesting one because it's an option short term. Is it the kind of thing that Liverpool could use almost as a strong arm where they're saying, we're not going to meet your price point, we have alternatives? Is Curtis Jones at the 6 an actual option for you?
if he has a belter of a game tomorrow, then yeah, it puts us in a better position than what we do going to the table today. I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan to see how, and intrigued to see how well he does tomorrow. I think he's done. His confidence has grown since the last 10 games of the season. He's then gone into the world and the under 21s and has played really well. For I know it's only under 21s, but he's carried that confidence in. I'm hoping that continues, because this kind of Curtis Jones is something that I think we have missed, and it's nice to see the lad with a bit of confidence under his belt, and getting the opportunities. I think it'll be a massive thing for him if he can actually hold down that number 6 tomorrow and prove to everyone how well he is in that position. I'm a bit like Nathan. I'm reluctant to see him in playing there, if I'm being truthfully honest. I see him more playing further up the field. Myself personally, where he played in the last 10 games of the season, that's where he grew his confidence. But I'm not saying he can't do it. It'll be good to see him to do it tomorrow, because it's against a better opposition. It gives you more of a sense of how established he will be, what kind of physicality he'll have, how good will he be playing in that number 6. Can he be as tackling as what we need him to be? Can he do a bit of what Fabinho done in there and give a little bit of security to the back four? It gives you more intrigue, and it gives you more of a fascination for tomorrow's game than any of the others, I think. But no, I have no fear of him. And if it doesn't work out, then we know we have to go out and get someone to replace. So it puts us in a win-win situation for me tomorrow.
Stephen, I'll let you jump in just in terms of Curtis Jones as a 6 option in the short term. Obviously, Bayern in the friendly tomorrow. It'll be a big test. Some good comments about that we'll pull up in a moment. Could it work for you? Because I know you've spoken a little bit about Trent potentially playing as the 6, which I cannot get behind that. But Curtis, it's an intriguing one for sure.
I think. See, it's the way we're all predicating an awful lot of this on the fact that Klopp plays a 4-3-3 and he uses Trent in an inverted role. We're predicating an awful lot on that. We don't know what way Klopp is going to play going forward. Like a lot with the players that we signed, and I said this a while ago as well. We seem to be moving towards a bit of a positionless center of our group. Trent can slot in there. Curtis Jones can come in there. Szoboszlai can move anywhere along there. McAllister can move anywhere along there. You have Elliott that can play on the wings and in the centre as well. While he's not a true midfielder, he can do it. You have Stefan Bajcetic who's coming in there, who can play a DM, or he can play in an 8 role as well. We're getting to a very sort of slot in, slot out midfield, and I don't mind that, because then that leaves you cover everywhere. If, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but we'll use the example because he's always injured. Thiago goes down. Well, then you have a Curtis Jones that can come in and play there. And if Curtis has to move up a bit, well, then you have Trent that can come in the inverted role, and McAllister can drop back. And when Salah's away at AFCON in January, Szoboszlai can play on that right wing along with Doak and along with Harvey Elliott too. So there's plenty of positional movement that can go around the place. And I really do think that we're moving towards positionless. I think Curtis Jones with that double pivot in the 6 role will work wonders, because it will allow either him or Trent, whoever is on the ball, to push forward and still leave a holding player there in front of a back 3. And if we get caught on the hop and there's a counter attack being played there, that 6 can play a bit of a sweeper. I'm fine with our back line. I don't think I have any issues with it outside of the depth. We spoke about it after the first and second preseason games that the likes of Joel Matip and Joe Gomez Gomez was just playing as if Joe Gomez was playing for a championship team. I don't think he's good enough to be in the squad at all, and I've said that for months. Ever since the Real Madrid game where we lost 5-2, I think he was a cause for 3 or 4 of those goals. And ever since seeing him coming back for preseason, I don't think he's at the races at all. He had a decent run a couple of years ago, but that's a couple of years ago. It's kind of time to maybe set the ship a sail for him. And Joel Matip too just seems to be just disinterested. Like the goal that occurred against Fort themselves, just half-hearted clearance that ended up in the second or third goal. I think it was the second goal at the time. I just genuinely don't think either one of them are quality, and I'd be very worried if somebody from our back line went down. Hopefully now we can get a centre back before the end of the window to add some depth to that, even a youngster to sort of be a protege to the likes of Konate and Van Dijk. And I know everybody said that we're not getting them and that we've lost interest and we've cooled in it, but there's a release clause there, and I'm just, if Inacio comes, that will be my transfer window made, and I've said it so much. But with the likes of Levi Colwill as well, he's signed for Chelsea, he's going nowhere. But I can't wait to see Darwin Núñez absolutely ruin him in the first game of the season. That's me too. But with Curtis Jones at the six, I think he can make it work, but I do think he needs help in that position, which is why I think the double pivot will work very well. It will allow either him or Trent to push forward, and he can sit there and let Trent push forward and do what Trent does and launch balls left, right, and centre. Curtis played well in it in the under-21s. He's played well in it so far, but the real test is going to be tomorrow. It's all well and good playing against second division German teams and Leicester when you're in that position in a friendly game, but tomorrow against Bayern Munich will kind of show if he's okay to do it against the big boys, the likes of City, the likes of Chelsea, the likes of Man United and Arsenal. I'm not including Spurs in that because they're not one of the big boys, and anybody can come at me about that. You can fight me on that. They're a conditional top 6 team, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I think he can do a job there if he has the help of the double pivot, and tomorrow will be a big teller on that. I think tomorrow sort of tells you who's going to be the main starters in our season going forward.
It does feel like a lot of factors are beginning to kind of be ticked off in terms of making the next signing, which was Fabinho and Henderson. The money's in now. They've formally moved on. There's this friendly will kind of showcase maybe the skill level that might exist. The options are there. McAllister played as a 6 for Brighton at times. Last season was in a double pivot. There exist options, obviously, but just kind of round out the Lavia discussion in specific. Stephen, you kind of mentioned it a bit earlier, but and also posed it to the entire chat. If you were Liverpool, if you were in these negotiating spots, would you sit firm at this not paying 50, or would you just go and reach it for the 50 and say, all right, we'll meet your price point and we'll pay it off? For you, Stephen, he's a guy who could play the next decade in the 6. It's not going to matter for right now, because he won't be ready in 12 days for this first match against Chelsea, most likely. But for the long term, just paying that 50, not worrying about anyone coming in for him, what would you be doing?
To be perfectly honest, Southampton need the money, and I think Southampton are shooting themselves in the foot, as I mentioned. The longer they drag this out, the more likely, however small, he picks up a knock. And if he picks up a knock, that's their transfer now and next season gone. So I think Southampton are playing a very dangerous game. They're playing with fire at the moment, and while I commend them for it, it can blow up in their face if it does come along. If it doesn't, however, I think 45 is the most you should be. That's including add-ons. I think 45 is the most you should be paying for him. Realistically, if they won't take 45, while I was against it earlier in the transfer window, Manu Kone, and then you also have Kepren Thuram as well. While they're not out and out 6s, they could very easily do a job there in a double pivot, as we mentioned. Jones technically isn't an out and out 6. But these guys are, and they're bigger too, so they could fit into the Fabinho role a little bit more. But I think the next person through the door is Romeo Lavia. I think it's just a matter of, as you mentioned earlier in the stream, Jack, picking up pennies. There's really nothing more to it at this point. He wants Liverpool. There's no problem on the player side, as Fabrizio Romano has said numerous times. So at this stage, it's down to the clubs, and it's time for John Henry to put up or shut up at this point, I think.
Indeed. Put up or shut up time. And I think Southampton will be only boosted by the fact that Chelsea reportedly made a £50 million bid last window, very late on in the window, trying to bring him back into to Chelsea. Obviously, the season happened. They got relegated. That changed the price point valuation a little bit, but they are always an option that could swoop in. Nathan, I'll let it jump to you. For you, where do you stand in terms of just pulling the trigger at 50 million, even if that's not what we value him at?
I don't really know, to be honest. Like I said before, going back to the possibility of him maybe not having a good season and his value dropping and them needing money, I think it kind of puts us in a better position than what they are in terms of being wanting to maybe push the deal. But I've just got a question for you. Like, I was just thinking about it then. What's your thoughts on maybe him forcing a transfer? What, like, I know obviously we see other clubs when like players are forcing to go to other clubs, and you sit there and go, "Oh, I wouldn't want that at my club. I wouldn't want to see a player force themselves." But what's your thoughts if we were offering 42 million, just putting a value out there, and Southampton are just reluctantly saying no, we want 50 million? What would you feel if he was like, went all Casado in January and put a statement out and wants to leave? What would you feel about that?
Me personally, I'd feel a little weird because we're putting a lot of pressure on the player when it's like 8 million. We're making the player have to step up and burn his relations with his former club if we bring him in for 8 million. Feels weird to me for us to put him in that spot. I wouldn't complain if he did. If we get him in for a bit cheaper, like, all right, that's cool. I'm glad he wants to join the club. I don't know, Kev, Steven, if you guys had any conflicting thoughts on if he forced a move.
I don't know, really. I don't have not so much conflicting thoughts on it. But if he wants to come and play for the club, he wants to come and play for the club. Ultimately, it is his decision. If somebody else comes in and signs him, and he doesn't want to play there, he can just refuse the contract. It's as simple as that. He can either he can dig his heels in if he wants, but I think a player of his age doing that now without having established himself might hurt his future career chances. It's all right when the likes of an Mbappe does it because they clearly have the career and the skill set behind them that they can demand that kind of stuff. But a 19-year-old kid digging your heels in and just demanding something at that age when you've really proved nothing is detrimental to your future career prospects. Let's say he dug his heels in and wanted to come here and he flops. Touch wood, he doesn't if he does come here, but let's say he flops when he does come here. Where's he going to go then? Nobody's going to want somebody that will dig their heels in like that, and that'll be his career ruined by 23. So it's kind of he's as a player and looking at it from the player's point of view, he's playing this beautifully. Not a word from his camp, nice and quiet, very calm, waiting for things to play out, waiting for a big payday, and that's going to happen to him. So really, it's either going to come from us or someone else or City, but realistically, it's a waiting game at this point, I feel.
Indeed.
I tend to agree with what everyone said, but I think the closer you get to the championship starting on Friday, I think you may see him trying to be reluctantly putting his name down to be put on the bench or playing at all. And then that'll give you a clear indication as to where it's gone, if it hasn't been sorted by then.
Nathan, for you posed the question. Interested if you had any thoughts either way on it.
Going back to what Kev said then, he could have to force. Again, I'm against that. I don't want him to force a move. I just thought it'd be an interesting question. I don't think Klopp would probably like that either. He doesn't seem like that's the type of player he'd like around. But going back to what Kev just said, the season starts soon. He could be sitting there and thinking, if I play a game and Liverpool are like saying, they definitely want me, and then I get injured, and then all of a sudden they don't want me anymore. I could be sitting here now saying, I've lost out on move just, over a small amount of money. But, we're going back to what Steve said before about, not forcing a move over like 8 million. But I think you can use that from both sides. You can look at it from like the Liverpool standpoint of Liverpool not paying the extra million, but you can look at it from the standpoint of, this 19-year-old kid, which he is a kid, has played fantastic for Southampton. But it's 42 million pounds, still a lot of money for a player that's played less than 40 games in the top tier of football. Do you know what I mean? So, I think the deal does get done. I just don't know how much. But yeah, I wouldn't want him to force a move to us. But I do think as the season maybe approaches for them, he could be a little bit hesitant of maybe wanting to play in case he does get injured. Because if he gets injured and does something really bad, it's very, very unlikely he's going to get any move, never mind to Liverpool.
Indeed. Kev, did we swing the question to you in terms of would you meet the 50 rather than letting him see him get scooped up by anybody else? I'm interested if you had any thoughts on what you would do if you were kind of forced to squeeze out a little bit extra money than you would in your valuation.
To be honest, what I think now, it's gone past that point of what I'd want to pay. It's gone past that. I think we have to put up the amount now. Whether we include it within add-ons, then I'm all for it. 45 up front or 45, and then the rest in add-ons. That makes perfect sense, and it's more amicable. We don't pay the full 50, but if he does meet and they are realistic add-ons, then you do get the 50. Put that in place. Do you know what I mean? Rather than the full 50. I don't think we get to that point. I think we have alternatives that we are willing to look at. As I've said before, that we will have a list of players, and time will tell if this does happen. But we're not too far away now, and I think we've put too much into this just to walk away. It's just it wouldn't look right for me personally if we put all this time and effort in, and then we walk away last minute. I don't know. It'll be baffling for me. We do it. It will be for 50 million. But if you're asking me how I would like it, it'll be 45 and 5 in add-ons for me personally.
Good from you there, Kev. If you're new to the page, subscribe if you're not already. Make sure you like this stream. Helps us get our reach out bigger. More Liverpool fans can be roped into the discussion point on future streams. Really appreciate everybody getting involved here today. A massive viewership today, over 300 people. Great to see so many folks in today's stream. There was just a recent article put out by Paul Joyce. Nothing too groundbreaking in it, but it does underscore what we've been talking about these last few moments. Liverpool have a list of midfield targets, and it is inconceivable that they will not sign a 6, given the departures of Henderson and Fabinho, which makes sense, and that's kind of being backed up by reports now. And the interest in Andre highlights to Southampton how Lavia is not the only 6 Liverpool are looking for. So that's also part of Liverpool's negotiating tactic is you're not the only option. We have other alternatives out there. Let's talk about that one I just mentioned, Andre. It's an interesting one. Also in the title for this one. So he's a fascinating signing for a multitude of reasons. So the Brazilian transfer window, in terms of if Fluminense, his current club, could bring someone in, it closes tomorrow on August 2nd. So they would have very little time. Even if the transfer got done right now, they'd have to act immediately to find a replacement to bring him in. So currently, the position, according to, I think it's Coao Tinoco. Apologies, my good friend Coao, if I mispronounced your first name. Portuguese, not my forte. He's part of the reporting that Liverpool can either do one of two things. They can purchase him for 40 million euros right now, or they can pay 20 million euros in January. So we wait 6 months, you get him half off. It's an incredibly difficult one. And Kev, I love putting the difficult questions onto you, clearly. So I'll push it to you first. It's obviously got layered complexity to it in terms of if he's your only guy who could play at the 6, and there's questions if he would be a Thiago replacement or would he be playing in the 6. He could play there, but I don't think that's what you want to bring him in for. In terms of the 40 now, 20 million in January, I'll put it on for you first, rather than what you think Liverpool would do, because I think we know what Liverpool would like to do, and that's spend less money. For you, what are you weighing up when you look at this?
I know nothing of the fella whatsoever, right? And I mentioned that on Saturday as well. I don't know nothing of him, so I'm not going to stand here and say, well, I've watched YouTube and I've watched a 5-minute video of him and I'm going to say that he's great. What I don't like is the fact that he's 5'9". He's got a disciplinary issue as well. And already a disciplinary issue in a Brazilian league. You put that into a Premier League, he's getting suspended at every point, at every price point, 10, 15, 20, 25. Unless he changes his attitude, there is a bit of a wildness to him. If you're asking me what my perfect DM would be, it would be over 6 foot, a beast, a brute, and someone who likes to tackle but knows how to tackle properly and doesn't and keeps that kind of side of him away. They're the things that I'm not happy with. But then you look at what he looks like, and from the stats I see, he looks more of a Thiago replacement than an actual Fabinho replacement. So for me, it's not that he can't do it at 5'9". I just want someone dominant in there. I want someone with the physicality, which is what we missed all of last season for me. And is one of the attributes that I thought would be a priority in this window as within that in that defensive midfield area. So it comes with a few issues for me personally, but not issues I can't just, I won't see to the side. But for me, it feels as though we're going further down a list of players so it meets the price point of where we want to be and how much we want to pay. And it's now, lo and behold, we go in with the price point and then we find out, oh no, you got to pay double. It's one of them. It's if we can get it done. Am I happy or sad? I don't know, to be honest, because as I say, I haven't seen much of him. He's progressively good with the ball, but the aerials, he's going to lose a lot of them in that midfield, and it's also his defensive mindedness in the fact that he does love a yellow card as well. So I'm a bit up in the air with it, if I'm being perfectly honest, Jack. I know it's probably not the answer you wanted, but
sitting on the fence as per from you, Kev. No, it's totally justifiable because I'm not going to claim to be the foremost expert of Brazilian football either. But he does seem to, from every piece of analysis, seems to liken him more to a guy who could come in to replace Thiago, who moves on for a free most likely next summer, than as a 6. So for me, that reporting seems more like a bluff from Liverpool that we could go for Andre as a 6 rather than Lavia. I mean, Lavia's got flaws. He's 19, obviously, and he's not a guaranteed success of £50 million. But at 40 this summer, Stephen, it seems a little ropey for Andre to come in and fill that role. If it's him plus a 6, I think that's really nice midfield depth, obviously. But if we're looking at him in isolation as this bluff towards Southampton, like this reporting from Paul Joyce that we just brought up is, I'm interested for you what you kind of take away from that. And also the age-old question, would you pay 40 now for him or wait a little while and get him for 20?
I'd pay 40 now for him if we already had Lavia. Realistically, that'd be my opinion on it. He, as Kev said, he's 5'9". He's very much, he's not a Fabinho replacement. He's a Thiago replacement, and I'm fine with that. He does play defensive midfield and attacking midfield and centre midfield in the Brazilian league, but that's the Brazilian league. You're not going against the likes of Ivan Toney or Erling Haaland or Harry Kane or anybody like that are just big guys that are all 6 foot and over. Realistically, he would be swamped in that 6th position. But then again, this is under the predication that we need somebody to replace Fabinho directly. We've mentioned it earlier that Curtis Jones can do a number in there as a double pivot and everything along the lines of that. I looked in when we first got announced to him. I looked into him a tiny little bit, not much, but from my viewings of him, he's a very good passer, very much like Thiago, very technical with the ball at his feet. He doesn't lose possession. He's very good at holding the ball. He does everything that we wanted Fabinho to do, which is get recoveries of the ball, hold the ball, allow us to get into position to go forward, and then distribute the ball forward. The problem is he's 5 inches shorter than what Fabinho was. That's the issue. Do I think he'd be a good signing? Yeah, sure, no problem. I think he'd be a great signing for 20 million now and get him in January, because the window for the Brazilian league is closing and they're starting to ramp up their season, and they obviously want to make a quick buck on him. But the only reason I would pay any sort of money for him now to come in as a 6, if that is even the role they envision for him, is if we already had Lavia. That's the only crux of it for me. And we don't have an out-and-out 6 at the moment that we know for certain is going to be starting there, that we've brought in outside of Curtis Jones, that probably will do a number there. But there's a lot to be said for how he plays and the way he plays. He could be very good to fall into a 10 or an 8 role at his height and his agility and how he can distribute the ball. But as an out-and-out 6 in the Premier League, I don't think he'd do very well, unfortunately.
And there also is just a time for him to bed in that is required for players that are brought in by Klopp. Typically, you very rarely see players walk in. The last few signings have been kind of a bit of a change of pace in that sense, with the exception of the love of my life, Darwin Núñez, who has not hit the grounds immediately at Liverpool like we would have wanted him to. But also reporting from Paul Joyce just now that Fluminense have told Liverpool they are reluctant to sell Andre until next year. Another little bit of a twist to the tale. Obviously, there's a lot of negotiating in the press, a lot of things still up there. Nathan, I want to swing it to you as well. Just on Andre, what your takeaways are with the reports.
I believe, I've seen a comment in the chat and you mentioned it before. I do believe that it could be a possible smokescreen for someone else. to talk about him as an actual player, I'm not going to say I've sit and watched him loads, but I have seen him a few times play live, and he does keep getting, like, we keep getting the comparisons. If you've watched any, I'd look at any comparisons on like Twitter, and people keep talking about like he's a mix of between maybe Gino Ronaldo and Thiago, but the player I'd probably say that what I've seen anyway, what I've in terms of, and the stats and stuff, who's come recently to the Premier League is maybe Bruno Guimaraes. Maybe not as good on the ball, but in a sense of he's probably a little bit more of an aggressor of what Thiago is. And I think like when Bruno Guimaraes comes to the Premier League, I think he had, you know, comparisons to like Thiago, and I'd say Andre is someone that I personally I would be happy to pay the 20 million and wait till January. But the only problem with Liverpool is, I think we all have the thought that if we spend any money right now, it's ultimately going to stop any more money that we're going to get to spend, and that's the only problem I've got. I'd be if I knew that we were going to sign Lavia, and I still think we need another player. Lavia, one number 6 or one player that is going to be capable of playing that 6 role is a must, 1,000,000%. That has to happen, and that has to happen very soon. I'd be happy to wait and bring Andre in January and let them, you know, it's going to be hard for them. They probably won't even get to replace him in the short time that they've got. You know, they've got what, 30 hours or so. Their season is already halfway through. I think they're about 5th in the table, or for 5th in the table, and they're quite close to the top places. So, you can see why they're demanding double the fee if they want to, you know, if anyone wants to deal with them now. And I would be all for it. Like, I think Liverpool do need to hop into the South American market a lot more. I feel like we're all sitting here contemplating players that we could bring in for the number 6, and, you know, in that ideal world, we'll all be sitting here talking about like Declan Rice and Kimmich and players like that. But, you know, there is a lot of gems there. You've only got to look at the likes of Casado, who come to Brighton, Ugarte, who's just gone to PSG. You know, these players, you start somewhere. You know, sometimes I feel like we have to take that gamble a bit more, and we just don't. And I think Andre's a little bit more further forward than what maybe some of the players are that I've just mentioned when they come into Europe. Or I'd be all for it. Yeah, I'd definitely go for him, but I'd be happy to wait till January, as long as we were definitely getting Lavia and maybe someone else.
Yeah, it's a tough one in terms of bringing in Andre with little pressure on him and Lavia with little pressure on him, because it feels like one of them's got to kind of come in right away. And there's actually a great comment here that I want to reference. Where is it from? BW? Just who's the smokescreen for? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea who the smokescreen could even be for. The club is doing an incredible job of keeping things quiet, what they have on their list. Make sure you like the video. We're close to 100 likes on this video, which I'm not sure we've hit that mark in quite some time. It's a strange one in terms of just he's got flaws to his game. He could come in and he could be an effective player, probably not in the 6, but it just doesn't seem like it's a ready-made guy in that role. And we're kind of now wondering, you know, well, if it's Andre's a smokescreen for somebody else, like now we're just out of options in the market that have been linked to Liverpool. Like we're going to a player that's completely out of nowhere, like a Soboslai from earlier in the window. So I really have no idea what to expect. Because I can't even Kev, I always love to throw like dumb questions your way, but I can't even ask you like what other 6 would you like to see in the market, like Aurelion Tchouameni. Of course, we'd like to see him be signed, but it feels strange. I think I think what is an easier discussion point is quantity and profile of players that will sign, because it feels like a defensive midfielder is guaranteed. But for you, Kev, how many more signings are going to be made on top of that defensive midfielder? Because it's been confirmed that the 6 is needed. And if Andre isn't the 6, could he be realistically brought in? I'm interested in how much more movement you expect from Liverpool this window.
I was asked on Saturday this. I was put on the spot. In fact, no, yesterday it was. I personally want 3. I want Lavia plus another midfielder and a left centre back if possible. Now, I think that's real. I think that is realistic. I think that can be doable. Who those 3 would be? Well, the other 2, apart from obviously Lavia, I think we're 90% certain that Lavia is going to be one of them, by all accounts. But who that other person will be, you know, throw them up in the air. You know, I think what you've seen from the 2 that we have brought in is that we do want a bit of versatility in that middle of that park, and we want people of the age of under 24, people who can play who are flexible and can play in a number of positions. You know, I'd like Thuram there. I know it's a more of an attacking midfielder, but you've got someone who's 6'4" and progressively can run with the ball and gives you that kind of physicality in there for me that allows you to think that, well, at least some part of his DNA will have his dad in him. Do you know what I mean? Who was the best right back in the world. So, there's work that we can do with that. That would be who I would like to bring in along with Lavia, if possible. And then as a left centre back, I don't really know. I did like Colwell, but then I mentioned in our chat today there was two I've kind of gone out with, which is Arthur Theatre, who's 23 from Stade Rennais, who can play left centre back. He looks progressively good with the ball and looks as though he could do a job. But I'm looking at people of about 25 million. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of ballpark I'm looking at. I'm not saying that's what we're looking at, but I'm looking at cheap alternatives. And should I be looking at cheap alternatives? Because we are Liverpool at the end of the day. But for me, that there's young progressive options out there. We just need to ensure that we can get them in through the door, and at the price points that certain players are, we're not going to meet that. So we've got to have a realistic choice. So for me, I think 3 is quite doable to the end of the window for me.
It's a fascinating question, Stephen. I'll pose it to you as well in terms of number of players and profiles of players you'd like to see. The reporting, I think, leads us to a very similar answer to Kev. I'm interested if you have any additional thoughts.
No, I'd be very much similar to Kevin in my thinking. The kind of profile of a player that we'd want, though, it has to be a certain kind of player, especially for the defensive midfielder role. We need somebody that can come in and do almost half of what Fabinho did. What Fabinho done fantastically well, and what was very underrated about his game is he recovered the ball well, covered an awful lot of space in a very short amount of time. He was very long and rangy. He was then able to hold the ball, hold off counter-attacking players, and then allow us to set up and then distribute the ball, whether in short or long, medium to long passes, to allow us to then progress the ball forward. We have that now in Trent in relation to the inverted right-back role, where he can come in and take the ball off the person who's recovering it, whether that be Jones, Lavia, or whoever it may be. But it wouldn't hurt either if they had some sort of passing game about them, and the kind of people that we're looking at all kind of seem to tick an awful lot of boxes on that. Obviously, they don't really fit the physical profile in some cases, in the case of Andre, but I think that's paper talk. I don't think there'll be any sort of a mention of him with their transfer window closing tomorrow. I think there's way too short a time on it. Maybe there might be a 20 million offer done and he comes in January. As depth, that wouldn't be the worst signing in the world, I won't lie. If he wants to come in and fill in an 8 or a 10 role or behind McAllister or Szoboszlai. But realistically, I think we need 2 more midfielders and we need another centre-back. Whether or not that is a left-footed centre-back or not, I do think we need depth there regardless, purely because of the depth that we have. I don't feel it's good enough. I feel there'll be a couple of more outgoings as well of the fringe players. As much as I hate to say it, I think Nat Phillips is going. I don't think Caoimhín Kelleher is going due to just how long it's taken. If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now, considering the player that he is. I think he's been told you're getting all the Europa games up until and possibly the final, along with a majority of the cup games. And I think Alisson is being told, look, you're the number one. You're going to get all the Premier League games. You're going to take one for the team here in relation to this, and you're not going to play every goddamn game. That kind of way, as much as a competitive player as he is, and he'd want to. I'd be the same. I'd want to play every minute, but the age that he's at as well, you kind of got to start limiting some minutes and less important games in the earlier cup stages and Europa League group stages. He's not necessarily needed, and he could very easily rest them because he's 30 now, and I know keepers can play to a long time, but you don't want him getting injured either when he's possibly the best goalkeeper we've ever had. I'd say Bruce Grobbelaar. That's just my own personal opinion on that. But with relation to centre backs, I think Colwell was a dreamland option. I think he was never leaving Chelsea. I think that was talk with Chelsea to bump his contract up to be like, I could go if I want, pay me more, kind of a thing. And it's worked. And I can't wait to see all 17 games worth of his experience at centre back this season. It's going to be fantastic. When he has Darwin Núñez sitting on his shoulder. With regards then to any other options, I'm the number one Inacio fan. I believe he could have done very well. Pavard as well was another option that could have come in there and slotted in on the right and allowed Trent to move into the CDM role if he wanted to. He could also play CDM or play centre back too if needs be to cover for the likes of Konate or Van Dijk. I do quite like the progression, however, of Kwanzaa. He is progressing very, very well. I'm liking what he looks like. He's the big, strong protege to Van Dijk that we could need. And I'm very, very, very happy that he's progressing the way he is. A lot of our youngsters are progressing quite well. I want Stefan Bajcetic to be back on the pitch, hopefully before the season starts. I don't think it is with his rehab. I think they're letting him come back slowly, much the same as Szoboszlai. They weren't going to rush him back. It's preseason. They're not going to risk anything, but I do think he needs a couple of minutes under him before the season starts against Chelsea. But where we are at the moment, I'm happy with what we've done so far. I'm also not happy with the fact that it's stalling a bit with certain transfers. I know it's kind of a contradiction, but in Klopp we trust is basically the way I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, you're allowed to have a bit of nuance to it. It's August 1st now. You know, I think I had a very similar thought, you know, after the Szoboszlai deal. Like, we've made 2 signings. We don't need to rush into our 3rd or 4th. I was hoping there would be a couple more. But, I mean, like, it's
I'd rather
August.
the right players for the right money rather than going and silly spending like some of the other teams have.
Indeed. 100%. But then you also go like, it's August. Like, the clock is beginning to tick a little bit. And that becomes a bit more of a looming deadline that exists at the end of this month. Nathan, I'll let you swing out in the end of this discussion about just profile of players and quantity of players that you'd like to see be brought in.
Before I answer that, I just want to. Someone in the chat asked about 4 times whether we'd be interested in Max Kilman or Basuma.
Oh yeah.
I feel like we have to answer because I've seen it that many times. So, Ahmed, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think Max Kilman's a good player, but I don't think he's good enough for Liverpool. And I think Basuma's a player that you're looking at 18, 24 months ago. Liverpool should not be looking at them. I think
he still has some allegations against him at the moment that haven't been settled.
I don't think that they would be 2 players I wouldn't be interested in. Max Kilman's not a bad player. Let me just put it out there. I think Basuma was all right a couple of years ago as well, but yeah. Anyway, next. So yeah, going back to what Steven said before about Fabinho being good at you know retaining the ball and keeping hold of it and letting the team get into position and all that and go forward. One thing I will say, going back to, we've obviously spoke about Andre before. Andre's really good at rotating the ball and letting the ball, like the team, get forward and move forward and holding off the ball to get that pass there. I'm sold on him, and I really want him, and I think that he will be a good option for us. In terms of signing a number 6, and obviously we know that has to happen. I think we do need 2 midfielders. I think we need centre back. The only problem I've got is the targets that I would want for midfield. I believe we need more than that, just because of the experience. So I'd be quite happy to get Lavia. I'd love to get Andre as well, but in the ideal world, I'd like to get him in January so he's cheaper, and then we bring someone else in. Who that number 6 is, it has to be an experienced player. If you're going to ask me who, I don't know, because I just think the market's a bit messed up at the minute, and I think it's hard to identify a number 6 that we're going to get for value for money. We're not gonna go and spend 80 million on Kimmich. I've seen Amrabat quoted in the chat. I like him. I think he's a good player. Would he be a good signing? I think he would. Would he be a signing that I think it's worth signing now? I don't know. He had a great World Cup. In terms of the centre back, I think we do need a left-sided centre back, especially when we're playing the 3-box-3. And the player I've looked at quite regularly is Hincapi. I think he would be a great option. He can play left back, play left centre back. I actually think he cost us a little bit of money though. I think he would demand quite a bit of a fee. I don't know how much, but I think he would be someone that is almost perfect in a sense of maybe a realistic fee that we could pay. Bastoni would be my dream centre back. We could go and get anyone, but I think we need at least 3. Or with the players that I want midfield wise, anyway, I think we need to. In Andre and Lavia, but then I think we need someone more experienced as well. Not just because of the experience that they bring. I don't want to be relying on. I think Stefan Bajcetic is a great player. I don't want to be in a position where we were in January up until mid-March, April, where we're relying on an 18-year-old kid. And I think We've seen how good he is. We've seen how good Lavia is, and Andre. He's obviously, as much as he's a great player, he's had one cap for Brazil recently in June. He's only played in the Brazilian league, so we all know completely different the quality of the football is in South America compared to the Premier League, which is the best league in the world. So yeah, I'd like to get them to him, maybe Andre in January, and then someone else this summer with Lavia, someone more experienced.
I want to analyze the reports as a group real quick as we kind of wind down the discussion on this stream. Thank you everyone for tuning in, by the way. It's been a fun one so far today. Nathan, I'll pose it to you first. The reports have come out that Liverpool are guaranteed to sign a 6, and they've told Southampton that they're not only looking at Lavia, Andre, and there's other replacements. Would Andre be that requirement to sign a 6? Would he fall under that from the club's perspective? From the club's perspective, I'm interested for you because I agree. I don't think he's a 6, but for you,
like I said, it's an interesting one because, like I said, the comparison I gave earlier was Bruno Guimaraes. Maybe not as tall, but that type of player, like an aggressive South American, but that can also is very good on the ball and happy to be quite selfish with the ball and let everyone else do what they want. But I just think I genuinely, like, the more I think about it and the more the articles coming out now, I just think that we're trying to force Southampton's hand. I just don't see in any world where we don't get Lavia, and I think that we're just doing that. And as much as it hurts me to say it, because I want us to sign Andre, I don't think we will. And I think that we're literally just trying to push them into, maybe forcing their hand a little bit to say this is what we want to pay, and if you're not going to accept that, there's other targets. But we're sitting here now twiddling our thumbs together, saying, well, who are you going to go and get for 50 million now? That's going to play number 6 and going to start tomorrow or after potential that Lavia's got. I don't know. I can't give you that answer. So
I have a feeling that there's a player there somewhere that we have no inclination of.
Yeah, it could be.
Much the same as Szoboszlai. All of a sudden, in the space of 72 hours, we're linked with him, and then he's on the plane for the medical. I genuinely think that that's the next thing that's going to happen again, because the McAllister signing, as we said in the little group chat, the WhatsApp group chat, that he was very much in the public eye, more so because it was kind of public knowledge that we were looking for him, and the release clause was there that it came out, and that was why it kind of went a bit viral. The Szoboszlai deal happened within the space of a weekend. It was news on Friday, and on Monday he was in the Access Centre getting his medical done. So I have a feeling that it's going to be something very similar to that all of a sudden Liverpool are going to drop 50-60 million on somebody and it'll just blow us all out of it. We're like, oh, we're grand, no, we're sound, we're fine, we don't need to worry about anything. And then 3 weeks later we'll be like, oh, we need to sign somebody, and we're all panicking again. It's just going to be a rinse and repeat kind of a thing, I feel. I do trust in Klopp, and I trust in the fact that they have the scouting department there that has turned players into gems from underpaying for them, the likes of forgotten players and everything. Like after Salah kind of flopped at Chelsea, went over to Roma, we got him and turned him into an absolute monster. And then other players that we've taken and turned into monsters as well. I genuinely do have trust in them, and I have a feeling that there is something big in the pipework. It's almost too quiet, if that makes sense. Like Southampton, really, the only team bidding for Lavia is us. Chelsea are set on Caicedo. That's their love story. Arsenal have Declan Rice. Man City have Rodri. Man United don't seem sold on him whatsoever. And Lavia wants Liverpool. It seems like it's only a matter of time. And I have a feeling by Friday we're going to get a here we go from Fabrizio Romano before the championship starts. I'll predict that now, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm on the stream again Thursday, so we'll see that night if it's been announced yet or not.
We'll put you on the spot then. We'll say, Stephen, you're on fraud watch. You're on major fraud watch.
Oh, I can be on fraud watch all season if you want me to. I don't mind. I'll make all ridiculous posts.
There you go. No, I think something's going to be coming very soon as well. Like, it just feels like it's been too quiet. It's been too long, and they're going to be forced to act. I think, again, the beginning of the season, this friendly tomorrow, the match against Chelsea, we'll likely see a makeshift situation at the 6, not the long-term options. It just feels like we've been sniffing around Lavia far too long for us to kind of just let nothing happen, obviously. The final question I have for you guys. Tomorrow's friendly is at 7:30 a.m. my time. Should I get up for that match?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's the biggest game of the preseason for who's going to be starting and playing going forward, and it's the biggest test that we'd have, considering it's a top league, a top Division 1 side that we'd be playing. Fair enough, it's preseason, but the last 2 games of preseason is where you will start to see your starting players come into fruition. And with the league only, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks away, this is where you start instilling the starting lineup in for longer periods of time, and then bringing in the rotationary players after that point. So the next 2 games are going to be vital for how the rest of our season is going to go.
Plus, it's good. It's a good opposition as well.
Yeah,
you're not talking of a crappy Bundesliga 2 side or anyone like that. This is a good test and a good early indication of where we may struggle or may not struggle in the season going forward, and where possibly we may need to go into the transfer market for me personally, anyway.
Yeah. All right, I guess I'll get up. It'll be a little early for me, my time, but I'll wake up doing that. We will be live on the page, though. I believe Charlie's going to be on for a watch along for that match, which should be a good one. Make sure you subscribe to the page or tune in tomorrow at 12:20 British Standard Time. There we go. I'm a genius. For Kev, for Stephen, for Nathan, I've been Jack. Delighted to be with you for the LFC Transfer Room for today's Transfer Central live stream. We'll catch you next time on the Transfer Room.